All right, class, this week we're going to be talking about early adulthood, which is ages 20 to 40, chapters 13 and 14. All right, so from a physical development perspective, cardiovascular and respiratory changes that we see happening at this age. As far as your heart goes, we don't see a lot of resting changes, so your heart pretty much is just going to pretty much be the same from 20 to 40. We do see lower performance under stress, however. So when your heart's put under stress, like if you're exercising really hard or during a time of fight or flight, it does not work as well as it used to, especially as we move closer to 40. There is a higher likelihood of developing hypertension as we get older, high blood pressure. And we do see that there isn't as many diseases related to the heart as there were 50, 60, 70 years ago, because we do have access to better medicine and ways to kind of help us live longer, even if we have heart problems. As far as your lungs go, your maximum vital capacity starts to go down after the age of 25. So you're not able to take in as much air and be able to use it as well after 25, but you're not going to really notice it that much unless you are like a pro athlete. Right? That's not going to be something that the average person will notice. As we get older, it gets harder and harder to take really deep breaths and use your lungs, but you're not going to notice that so much between 20 and 40. So this is a fun graphic that I like to show you because this is how long it takes someone to run a 10K. So that's 6.2 miles would you be running that. So you see between 20 and 40, there's not a big difference in how long it takes people to run. Your athletic performance is pretty much the same at this age range. After 40, we start to see it going a little bit slower, and then once we hit about 65, we see it taking much longer to complete this run. Although I love the fact that we even have data on 90-year-olds who are still just yeah, I'm running 10Ks. I'm 90, but it takes them a lot longer than it did when they were 20. All right, so our athletic skills tend to peak between 20 and 35. So you see that most people who are the best at their sport tend to be between 20 and 35, with a couple of exceptions in sports. But for most sports, like it shows cycling, all of the pro sports, most of the Olympic sports, the people that are competing and are at their highest level are between 20 and 35. It takes that long to get really good at something, but also it's when your body is kind of the most ready to be, at its highest athletic kind of peak. We do see the decline kind of happening slowly until about the 60s, like we just saw, and then goes faster and faster. The more you train, the more you continue to do your sport or exercise, you see less loss over time, and the loss is slower than people who don't continue to exercise. All right, so reproduction is seen as kind of ideal at this time, especially in your 20s and early 30s. In our American culture, that's when we kind of expect people to have babies if they're going to be having babies. We do see, though, that there has been a trend for a while now, a few decades now, in delaying childbirth. People used to have babies when they were 18 to 20, right? You married your high school sweetheart, you got married when you were 18, you already had a couple babies, 2 or 3, 4 kids by the time you were 25. Now, we're delaying it, for multiple reasons. Most of the reason being that women are going to college, they're going to graduate school, they're starting their careers, and they're doing all this before they have babies. So they're having them later on in life. Fertility problems do increase with age for both males and females, but mostly for females. You are your most fertile when you're a teenager, but you're still really fertile in your 20s and early 30s, and then it starts to decrease. We do see a very sharp fertility drop around the age of 44 for women as we start to get into kind of pre-menopausal years. Men show a gradual decrease in fertility over time as they get older. Sperm mobility gets a little less. Sperm production gets a little bit less. However, men will continue to be fertile for the rest of their lives unless they have a medical problem or they, have a vasectomy. All right, so variations that we see in health, U.S. death rates in early adulthood are higher than any other industrialized country because, of course, it is. We are always number one in the crappy things. We have more people that die between the ages of 20 and 40 than pretty much any other industrialized country. So a lot of our people are dying from accidents, and a lot of it has to do with alcohol-related accidents and car accidents, things like that. But we also have a lot of people that die from illnesses that are preventable but aren't caught due to lack of health care. So socioeconomic status variations we see here are that if you're poor between 20 and 40, you're much more likely to die of something that's preventable than if you are of a higher SES. All right, so our leading cause of death at this age is still going to be unintentional injuries. This is going to continue, since we were kids, right? It's going to be unintentional injuries. Cancer and cardiovascular disease are going to be the next likelihood. You're not likely to die of cancer between 20 and 40, even if you get it. And you're not likely to die from cardiovascular disease, even if you have it, because cardiovascular disease is kind of a slow roll to kill you. But those two are going to pop up and be much higher as we get older. Suicide, homicide, and having complications related to HIV and AIDS are other kind of reasons for death in adulthood. But pretty much across the board, if you die between 20 and 40, the likelihood is you died in an injury, and most of those are car accidents. All right, so if you're overweight at this age, what is causing that? Well, number one is heredity. You can't blame it all on that. We like to blame our parents for everything, but part of it is, right? There's some people who just are made to be, skinny little poles, and some people are more short and stout, like a teapot. That's one part of it. Right. The other bigger part of it is, environmental pressures in which you actually eat, right? So, we have a lot of cheap fat and sugar in our society that makes it easy to get, right? It's really hard if you're hungry and you're not at home, you don't have time to cook, and you have to go out and grab something that's actually healthy, right? Even like the salads at fast food places are like 800 calories. We also have supersized portions, right? Our portions in America especially are huge compared to other industrialized countries. Like, we overeat significantly. And then what happens is we eat too much and our stomachs stretch out, because your stomach will stretch and restrict based on what's put in it. And then you get, the food empties out, and now I'm hungry, and now it takes more to fill it up and for the nerve that wraps around your stomach to send to your brain that you're full. And then you just keep eating more and more and more, and it takes longer for you to feel full, and then you're just, overeating. In our busy lives where we're, constantly going, back and forth and picking up food and going to fast food and, grabbing stuff isn't, helping. We also see a decline in physical activity, right? Once you leave school and you're, like a grown-up, like you don't have that built-in PE class anymore, and you're trying to find a time to work out, it gets really hard. And it's especially hard for women who tend to do most of the caregiving while working full-time and doing everything else. They're less likely to work out, and then therefore, along with the poor eating habits, not getting enough exercise, leads to potentially gaining weight and becoming overweight. If you are overweight, obviously you can lead you to health problems. It doesn't mean you will have health problems. It just puts you at a higher likelihood of it. We can't say, oh, all overweight people have all these things. That is not true. You can be overweight and be perfectly healthy, but you are at a higher likelihood of having these things like high blood pressure, heart disease, becoming type 2 diabetic, liver and gallbladder problems, because again, those are processing like all the not great stuff in your system, and the more you're putting into it, the more overworked they become. If you're overweight, you're more likely to have sleep problems like sleep apnea, digestive issues. And as we get older, we also are more likely, if you're overweight, to have social discrimination. So studies have found that overweight people aren't shown houses in nicer areas, even if they can afford it. They are denied apartment leases, even if they have the same qualifications as a non-overweight person. In education, they aren't, called on as much. They are not taken as seriously. In careers, same thing. They're less likely to be promoted. And this affects women more so also. So there have been multiple studies that have shown that women who are overweight are discriminated against much more than men who are overweight. And in their careers especially, they are promoted much less than overweight men and, quote unquote, normal weight people. And then just like the mistreatment, right? Being fat is the one thing people can still make fun of you for and no one cares, right? We're not allowed to make jokes about people for pretty much anything else, but we're still it's still socially acceptable to make fun of people for being overweight. And, mistreating them is still seen as not a bad thing, because if you are overweight, you must be lazy. You must not know how to take care of yourself. It's all your fault. And that, is difficult. And there's a whole other realm of this, which goes into medical mistreatment, where people who are overweight aren't taken seriously by doctors. Doctors say that everything that's wrong with them is because they're overweight, and they don't actually have their real medical problems addressed by doctors often. So to treat obesity, you have to dress like it's 1980 and play racquetball, obviously. So diet and exercise, the end. There is no miracle treatment. It's just diet and exercise, and it's mostly diet. It's 95% diet. You have to restrict your calories. You have to watch the carbs. You have to watch the sugar intake, right? The refined sugar intake, and get exercise. Go out there and get moving. Eating records help a lot because they kind of force you to keep track of what you're eating, and if you have to keep track of that and write down everything, you're less likely to pick a food that you don't want to have to keep track of. So we have really great apps and things now, like MyFitnessPal, where you put the food in and it tells you, this is how many calories it is, and you put in, okay, I don't want to have more than 1,400 calories a day. And it takes away from your calorie count, with everything that you put in. So maybe I want that donut. And so I put donut into MyFitnessPal, and I see that that's going to take, 400 calories away from my, 1,400 for the day. I'm going to be like, oh God, it's not worth it. So, forcing yourself to keep track of it can really help. Having the social support there, right? Having other people that are there and aren't saying oh, you're perfect just the way you are. Here's some cookies. And being able to say, you know what, we're going to support you, that you want to be doing this for you. We do love you just the way you are, but we're not going to try and, sabotage you from losing weight. Having good problem solving skills. So, you're going out to dinner. Won't it be great when we get to go out to dinner again, everybody? You're going out to dinner somewhere, and you're trying to eat healthy. You need to use some problem solving skills. You need to go in and maybe look online first and see what they have there, and look up the calorie count on the thing so that you know exactly what you're going to order before you go, and don't look at the menu, right? Just go in and say, nope, I'm not going to go there. Choosing not to go maybe to a Mexican food restaurant where they're going to immediately bring you chips and salsa if you know you're going to eat the chips and salsa. I know I'm going to eat the chips and salsa and queso and all the delicious stuff. And know that it's an extended intervention, right? This is not something you can just do quickly and just be done with it and then eat whatever you want again. It has to be a lifestyle change, right? Diets don't work. It needs to be a lifestyle change. And as we get older, it gets harder and harder and harder to lose weight. So, and those fad diets that worked when you were 20 don't work anymore, right? Not eating any carbs, and I lose 20 pounds in a month doesn't happen anymore as you get older. So it just needs to be a good, healthy lifestyle change. That's the only thing that's going to work. Sounds easy. It's harder to do in practice. All right, so for exercise, only about a third of adults get enough. We want at least 20 minutes of moderate exercise 5 days a week or more, but very, very few people get that, and they actually want it to be more and more vigorous. So every single day, 30 minutes of vigorous exercise. Very few people have time with that. Americans do not have lives that make them be able to have time for that for the most part. And about 40% of Americans are completely inactive. They don't do any sort of exercise at all. You're more likely to be inactive if you're a woman because you have the extra stress of, doing all the shopping and the caretaking and the working and everything else. And if you're lower SES, you're working 2 or 3 jobs. You don't have, money for a membership. It isn't safe in your neighborhood to go for a run at night. You're less likely to be someone who goes out and exercises.